Hello and welcome back. So, like I said, we're going to be looking at Romans chapter 6, Romans chapter 7, Romans chapter 8, and Romans chapter 9. These are the deep stuff in the book of Romans. And from experience, I see that it's not like they're not part of the book, they are definitely part of the letter, but this Romans 6, 7, 8, and 9, I think, or up to 11, from 6 to 11, in my opinion, I think that's the part of the letter that requires a lot of uh, delicateness in explanation because it can be easily misinterpreted. So we're going to be doing a lot of reading of the text and following step by step. So maybe because of time, we'll just be having continuation from wherever I stopped as we go on. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm not saying 12 is easy peasy, but it's not easily misconstrued as 6 to 11, at least in my opinion. And this part again is the part where when you read the book of Romans, when you get to this point, you start getting confused, like, what's this language? Even when the NIV and all these easy translations try their best to not use the KJV language of what I do not do, they still can't avoid it because the complexity is just there. So we have to take it carefully so you are able to understand. Okay, so Romans chapter 6 verse 1 starts in, it's a very popular one. It says, "What shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase?" If you're familiar with the Bible, or you've been around Christian environment, you know this is a very popular verse. It can either be a weapon, or it can be something that just draws you back and you're like, what do I say next? Um, so uh, so Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 5, and he has already established that righteousness is by faith, and I think I've done my best to explain that is central to understanding the book of Romans. So picture this: there are Jews among the person Apostle Paul is writing to, and there are people who used to be Jewish, who used to be worshippers under Judaism. They were still Jewish, and now someone is presenting to them that righteousness is by faith and not by the works of the Lord. That's the two contrasts. Then it leaves the question, so just like the way people still ask today. So if it's by faith, if it means that it's not by what I do, which Apostle Paul took his time to explain in Romans chapter 4, so does it mean I can just do as I like? And Romans chapter 6 is that chapter of the Bible that explains this thing in detail. And that's why I say it is quite interesting that a lot of people have misinterpreted this. So again, to rebuttress the fact that Romans is that book that can be misconstrued, and it takes a lot of guts to say you want to explain it to people. So now let's read. What shall we? So I gave that background to let you see his flow of thought, why this chapter is necessary. So with all I've said, grace, faith, righteousness is by faith, not by what you do. And the people that used to believe before that righteousness is by what you do. So Apostle Paul then now argues this. He asks himself this question. Logic. Let me just quickly chip this in again, that this is how you know someone who is not trying to be conveniently right. You would even ask yourself those hard questions. And that's what Apostle Paul did, and I really love that. What shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means. We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer? You see, in the context, in proper context, this is what Apostle Paul is saying. Let me try and rephrase it. In earlier verses, he has told them righteousness is by faith, where sin increases, grace increases yet the more. That's how we ended chapter 5, as a matter of fact. So then he asked the question that anybody who was Jewish or practiced Judaism would ask. So based on what you've said, should we then continue to sin since grace usually increases where sin increases. And he answers them, he said, by no means. Why? Because we claim that we have died to sin. The claim of Christianity is this, and this is, if I say this, I've as well covered the book of Romans chapter 6. The claim of Christianity is this, that Christ died our death, that in Christ dying we died. So today, if somebody dies today, can they give him a ticket? No policeman can come to his casket and say, you know what, you have to pay this ticket. Because he's dead, the law has no power over him anymore. Because he's dead, he cannot sin anymore. So that's Apostle Paul's claim that, shall we continue to live in sin and ask that grace may abound? By no means. We are already dead to sin. How can we live in sin any longer? That can be a nature. That can be a belief that I'm dead to sin, like you would always find in the extreme grace sect. Oh, I'm dead to sin. I cannot sin anymore. That's true. But it also has a continuous effect that because I'm dead to sin, I cannot do it again. Because I'm dead. Do you understand? It's not saying you won't have the temptation. It's saying you are dead to sin. How can we who are dead to sin live therein? I'm already dead. I can't live again. So it's a confession of faith, quite all right. Confessing who you are now. But it's also something to live. I don't know if that makes sense. That's exactly what is passing, and that's what you see in Romans chapter 6. How shall we who are dead to sin? Then he goes on to tell them, the same when you were baptized, it was a symbol, it was a way to demonstrate your death. And the same way you were brought out of the water, the same way Christ was raised back to life, you have also been raised back to life. So the life you are living now, you are living just as Jesus is living. Jesus does not have the tempt. Jesus is living like someone that cannot sin anymore. That's the way you should view your life. And this is what I'm going to say, that the life we have now in Christ Jesus is a lot by faith. That's the point of our belief. You can't do this life without faith. It's not logic. Look at verse 11. It says, in the same way, count yourselves dead to sin. You have to settle it up here. I am dead to sin, but I am alive to God. I'm dead. If I'm dead, I can't lie. Somebody who is in the casket today cannot tell you a lie. That's me now. Though I am living, I am dead. Guess what? Hey, everybody around me, I'm dead. And because I'm dead, I can't sin. So for that person who is plagued with habits, plagued with destructive habits, and is wondering, oh, I thought they said when I become a Christian, I won't do this thing anymore. That's true. That thing does not have power over you. But there is a part where you count yourself as dead to sin. Hey, masturbation, I'm dead. If I'm dead, I can't masturbate. It defies logic, but that's what the Bible says you should do. And remember what I said in the second episode, that or I think the first, as a bonus point, that the book of Romans was not written to sinners, it was written to believers. So if you know that this letter was written to people who already believe, you will know that it's talking to people who are believers, telling them, count yourself. It's not talking to sinners. It's talking to Christians. It was written to Christians. So he's telling his readers, count yourself. Verse 11, I'll read it again. In the same way, count yourself dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. So when that sin faces you, because of time, we can't go through the whole chapter, but this is central to understanding Romans chapter 6. Count yourself. Count yourself. I'm no longer a slave of sin. I'm no longer a slave. I'm no longer alive to be able to sin. I am dead to sin. I am alive to God. There is no sin in heaven, right? There is no masturbation. I count myself as dead to sin and alive to God. This is the mindset. This is the understanding Apostle Paul was communicating in Romans chapter 6. And because of time, I'm going to see you on the next episode. Bye.